Come see us on tour in Dallas, Texas, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only there.
So inmates can make up nearly a third of those fighting California fires, according to Forbes here. You know, it's an interesting side note to this. I think it's Kim Kardashian, who I guess is studying to be a lawyer,
Is that
speaking out
right?
about this. Yes.
Well, that's the family business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's going into the family business.
It's the family business.
She decided to be known for something other than her ass.
Mm-hmm.
As the and a dirty video with Kanye. As the shock of the Los Angeles fires and their effect on so many communities, businesses, and families is still being digested, lots of attention is being turned to those who are on the front lines fighting the flames.
Tell you,
Many
her ass could have gotten OJ off as well.
could have. I think she was too young at that time, actually. Many people, although in Hollywood, anything goes, right? Many people might not be aware that one particular group has long been dependent on to battle wildfires, inmates. While the 13th Amendment ended slavery in the United States, a loophole allows people convicted of crimes to be forced to work for public or private enterprises. In this case, those tasked with firefighting volunteer for those positions and must meet certain criteria. They are not assigned without their consent. Their pay scale was doubled in 2023, and depending on the skill level and the task assigned, they either receive 16 to 74 cents an hour or a maximum day rate of 580 to 1024. Most of their lunches consist of a simple sandwich, 2 pieces of white bread with a few slices of bologna, plus an apple. Their daily food budget of approximately $4 per day is hardly enough to sustain them for their high volume of manual labor. All right, so it might be voluntary, but it's slavery. These are slavery-like conditions, and the circumstances under which you're volunteering are coercive because you get, this article for some reason doesn't mention it, but you get 2 days off your sentence for each day that you do it. So, you know, they got you locked in a cage. Hey, you want to fight fires so that you can spend a little less time locked in a cage? Yeah, we'll give you bologna too. We'll throw in some bologna.
Yeah, exactly.
Incarcerated firefighters have some of the highest injury rates among all prison workers and are 4 times more likely to sustain injuries compared to other firefighters. Also, they work some of the longest hours and have some of the hardest tasks to execute. They don't shoot water hoses. They use powered chainsaws and manual hand tools such as axes with the goal of starving the fire of fuel to continue to the burn. In some form, inmate firefighters have been used in California since the end of World War II. The state has leaned on inmates to provide additional firefighting staff and hand crews to help contain the blazes. These teams also respond to other disasters like floods. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has a conservation camp program that employs incarcerated people as firefighters who respond to emergencies at the local, state, and federal level. The program started in 1915, and the modern protocol of training the inmates at camps began in 1946. Today, there are 44 conservation camps, also known as fire camps, operated by the CDCR in partnership with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection and the LA County Fire Department. In 2010, nearly 4,000 inmates lived in California's fire camps. That number has declined due to the prison population shrinking, no thanks to Kamala Harris, which we'll get into, sentencing reform, and less inmate interest in this volunteer assignment. Guess they decided living is more valuable than 2 days off the sentence. CDCR has tried to expand eligibility to higher risk inmates, but the program still represents up to 30% of the wildfire workforce. For perspective, in 2023 to 2024, the Los Angeles Fire Department has 3,902 employees. That's 3,246 uniformed firefighters and 353 professional support, and is the third busiest in the United States. So that's about equal to the number of firefighters in the fire camps, at least in 2010. So Kamala Harris. Now, this is part of why a lot of people, myself included, have never had a lot of patience for the argument that you had to vote Democrat because Donald Trump's a racist. I never bought it because of things like this. Now, people like Kamala Harris are very necessary in this age. If you want to continue to abuse incarcerated, mostly black and brown people, you can't really get the guy with the mirrored shades going, yeah,
Right.
you get rabbit in your blood. You can't go with that. So that's how someone like Kamala, who has no particular talents to speak of, at least none that we can speak of on a family program, ends up in the position that she ended up in, because they need to put a face like that on these kinds of policies now, and they need someone sociopathic enough to do that, and that's Kamala. How Kamala Harris fought to keep nonviolent prisoners locked up. On May 23rd, 2011, the Supreme Court found in Brown versus Plata that California's prison system was in violation of its prisoners' Eighth Amendment rights. Despite its relatively conservative tilt, the court identified prisoner release as the most effective method for ending the state's constitutional violation in a timely manner. By April 2023, just 2 months from the initial deadline given in that Supreme Court decision, California still had 9,636 prisoners, more than the court-imposed ceiling. The state submitted a proposal that involved relocating inmates to fire camps to fight wildfires and preventing out-of-state prisoners from being returned. The court found good time credits alone would do more than enough to close the gap and solve the problem for good. Some 5,385 inmates were eligible for release under good time credits. But Governor Brown, with Harris as his defense lawyer, this is Jerry Brown, Governor Moonbeam, way out on the left he's supposed to be, right?
Yep.
Big lefty. With Harris as his defense lawyer, did not agree. Harris's office launched into a campaign of all-out obstruction, refusing to answer why they could not simply release low-risk, non-violent inmates to conform to the Supreme Court's request. Quote, defendants offered no explanation, however, why they could not release low-risk prisoners early, the June 2013 ruling stated. In late 2014, lawyers from her office claimed that nonviolent offenders needed to stay incarcerated lest they lose bodies for fire camps in the wildfire-plagued state, as Jackie Kucinich of the Daily Beast reported. The Daily Beast, liberal rag in good standing. Harris was quick to disavow the memo, claiming she had no knowledge of it, and telling BuzzFeed News she was shocked by the argument. Well, then you're grossly incompetent and you shouldn't be in public life. But it squares firmly with the sort of arguments her office was putting forward for multiple years preceding it. So for years, your office had this major case pending on prisoner release, and you knew nothing about the argument that your office was making. So, yeah, this is why the idea that Trump is an existential threat because of his racism, as opposed to the Democrats. Look, you can make a case against Trump, but that was always absurd. At Christmas, I had somebody say to me that he was horrified that Trump got elected. I said, why? He said, I just can't believe so many people in this country are racist. I said, well, Kamala Harris fought to keep mostly black prisoners locked up. She fought to lock them up for marijuana. Joe Biden bragged about working with segregationists. That was his opening pitch in 2019. He bragged about the fact that they never called him boy. Well, why would they? You're white. Why would they have called you boy? Bragged about it. He was very proud that they never called him boy. So this is one more example. They literally, this is Jerry Brown. Supposed to be, this is what the corporate media perceives as a lefty, right? This is like a non-Bernie lefty, like a lefty that doesn't scare them, right? This is
Right.
what they define as the outer limit of establishment Democrat politics. And they're fighting to keep these people in jail who are eligible to be released to use as slaves to fight fires. Now, if you had that story in a red state in the South, MSNBC would never let that story go, much less if it were attached to a Republican presidential candidate. They would have been talking about it every day, about how they're gonna re-enslave black people all over the country if they get elected. Not a word about this in the corporate media.
Well, because this was obviously a story surrounding Kamala, and that article that you just read was printed in 2020 in the summer of that year, which was after Kamala had already withdrawn from the race. She had withdrawn like December of 2019, January 2020. She was out, before the Iowa caucuses. So she had been long gone by the time that came out. But, I had somebody show me this article, because this article's kind of been making the rounds, not the second one, the first one that you showed.
Yeah, no, she was just running for president.
Yeah.
Did you see Chris Hayes jumping up and down about this? I didn't see it.
Well, no, I mean, not with her as the nominee. Absolutely not. But, somebody just shared this article with me and they said, oh my God, did you know this? And I said, yeah, I knew this. And yes, I didn't know specifically for this fire, but I could have told you that, yeah, of course, they're using prison labor for this fire. Right. Because I knew from, following the 2020 campaign that this had been standard practice in California, largely thanks to Kamala Harris. And if you were paying attention, you would see reporting like that from outlets like the American Prospect during that cycle. So that's why it was on my radar. So no, it's not shocking. So much of what people are shocked by is not new. You just have to have your ear close to the ground. Right. So much of this stuff comes to the surface when a major news event happens, like these just apocalyptic large-scale fires in Los Angeles now. But no, this has been known for a while, that California uses prison labor to fight fires, paying them just, absurd wages. And yes, the most extreme element of this is obviously keeping them in jail for longer so that they could exploit the labor to fight fires.
We just covered, because the AP, there's a reporter, Robin McDonnell, who's really on that story of prison labor being used as slavery. You have prisoners working the counter at McDonald's. People who are serving severe sentences with no supervision. For anyone who hasn't read it, it's right behind me here. This really gets into this. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And that's why the 13th Amendment comes up in that article itself. Slavery never ended. They found a workaround. To continue slavery. A lot of the prisons in the South are literally on the old plantation grounds. Angola is on a plantation ground, and they're continuing to use these people as slave labor. In California, this completely Democrat-run state. Oh, the good Democrats. They do the same thing. And it's easier for them to get away with it because they're able to virtue signal and slap a face like Kamala over those practices.
That's true. On the other hand, though, there is a sort of detente around issues where there is bipartisan consensus, just like Israel and AIPAC. Like, notice when Thomas Massey told Tucker that every Republican he knows has an AIPAC handler. Notice MSNBC didn't touch that. They didn't touch that because they know the Democrats have AIPAC handlers too. So like that example that you just made of prisoners working the counter at McDonald's, that's in Alabama. So that's a very red state, obviously, where that happens. You don't see liberal media jumping on it. Why? Because there's a détente, because they know that the Democrats do it too, and they know that they're in agreement. Israel, same thing, right? Issues where there's that kind of consensus, Yeah, they both the media ecosystem just kind of let that go. They just kind of leave that be.
Well, didn't California have a referendum and the voters decided to keep prison labor?
Yeah, there was some referendum about prison labor. It's funny how the most progressive economic policies on ballot measures in 2024 passed in the reddest of states, but California shot down an anti-prison labor measure. I forget what it was, but you're right. It was something about, basically, some sort of ballot measure to, empower prisoners so they weren't exploited in some way. And yeah, they shot it down. The good liberal progressives of California, they voted it down.
Exactly.
Yep.
Hey, a lot of us are trying to get our finances in order to start the year off right. And there's some great news for homeowners. Interest rates have dropped and are now in the 5s. If you have been buried in high-interest credit card debt, now's the time to break free. American Financing can help you access the cash in your home to pay off your highest interest debt. Last year, their salary-based mortgage consultants helped customers save an average of $800 a month. That's like giving yourself a $10,000 a year raise. What a way to start the new year. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing today at 888-804-0303. That's 888-804-0303. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Jimmy. Come see us on tour in Dallas, Texas, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only there.